we're wondering whether or not we need to have as robust a move management plan if we can only remove the books on the bottom shelf and then remove the frame from it and replace flooring around the frames.
If that's something that you're up for doing, then yeah, definitely.
It's a possible course of action.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
And we can look at all kinds of options like that to speed things up.
Have you done anything with libraries and book stacks in which you've done, or either removed them or left them in place?
Well, yeah. So the first project we did at Boston Public Library was actually a flood in the basement at the front, the plaza side. And they needed to get that fixed, which meant we needed to dig up the plaza. Well, we call it a plaza. We're not talking about Copley Square. I'm talking about the plaza in front of the library. Dig that up, get it put back together again in time for the laser show they were going to do on the front face of the building. So we had to move. They're more storage stacks. They don't come apart the way you're talking about. They're not built in. They're back of house down there. But yes, we had to get all of that out of there, store it, and then bring it back.
If there are no other questions, then we are going to interview one more person. We are going to deliberate, and if you call Mason tomorrow, you can find out where you finished.
Sounds good.
So thank you for coming in. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck with your interviews.
Thank you, thank you.
Mark, do you want to see if Socotec is here?
I'll certainly do that. I didn't know if
Just calling on you because you
and that's fine. You have 5 minutes before Socotec. I'm going to do it because you may want to pay bills or do something in the 5 minutes you have,
Now we do
if you want.
Jim, I think you just went to, you go to recess or?
Oh, yeah.
No, I didn't know if you did. That's all right. Okay, all right, so we could,
So do we have some other business we can do, Mason?
yeah, absolutely. So we did the minutes. So we do have a invoice from Waterline Industries. This was application number 9. So we actually spoke last Wednesday about the project updates on the interconnect. This invoice just wasn't prepared in time for the meeting, so we didn't want to enter it into the record at such time. But you got the project update. This is consistent with what we discussed last week. Is being recommended by Courtney to pay. It's been signed by Courtney. I've reviewed it. I'm in agreement with the invoice. So we'd be looking for approval. This would be application number 9 with the current payment due of $522,107.41.
What percentage of completion does this get them to?
I apologize. Let me quickly do the math. I didn't have.
Andy is running 20 minutes behind, but another representative of Socotec is here, and she'll be coming in as soon as she gets.
We can do our other business then until he gets here.
Exactly.
That would bring us to 72% complete.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm looking at the
Including-
application, and it's about almost 2.3 out of 2.9.
Correct. So, so it's bringing us up to total completed less retainage, just under 2.2 million. The contract, remember, there was a change order. So the original contract value was 2.937 million, and there was a $77,000 change order. That was change order number 1. And so the contract value is now $3,014,780.34, and this brings us up to 72% complete.
Okay. Any questions? For a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. What about the window wall at Willett?
Yes. So, let me just check this out. So this was last time Anjanette came before the commission, we had discussed a potential change order that could be coming related to some unit prices that might need to be activated for some of the work that was found within the walls once they actually opened things up. There were certain boards we weren't going to be sure. That was why we included a unit price. We weren't going to be sure if we were going to need them or not going in. The amounts needed exceed the allowance, so we're going to be requesting a change order for that. So it's specifically to replace unsuitable materials that were uncovered during the demolition. The existing substrate was found to have an unforeseen condition with the gypsum board in lieu of plywood, but behind the existing paneling and framing. The documents that were put out required plywood behind the new systems. So this change order would cover the costs for those materials. The plywood, the labor, the plywood, and the blocking, I think you see on the printed version. Anjanette also notated sort of the amounts there for the plywood, the blocking, and then there is the overhead for the contractor. So the total value of the change order is $6,243.65. This has been reviewed by our OPM. This has also been reviewed by Socotec, who's the architect of record. Socotec, who will be here if anyone does have questions. It's a separate matter than what we're about to do, but if anyone does have an additional question on this, this was reviewed and signed by both of them. I'm in agreement with the change order. It uses this, we carried very small allowances with unit prices included in the bid documents, and we're essentially now recognizing that we need to utilize this.
Okay, so I see there's a summary sheet here that tells us
Correct.
what the allowance was and then what we actually expended.
Correct.
So where do we stand on that project overall now?
So no real changes since the last time Anjanette joined us, which I believe was the August meeting. So a lot of we're still waiting for some of the materials that are being delivered this month. And everything should really be kicking off the next couple of weeks and construction really happening, the bulk of it in October.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Did they pull things apart?
Yes, so there's
before
some of
new
the
stuff got here? Is that what happened?
Yeah, so there's some of the initial work that's doing. There's still some materials that, again, once the initial work's kicked off, there's some stuff that's happening prior to some of those materials getting delivered on site. This is the reason we're trying to move on this change order is if we don't move on this change order, this is one of the first steps that need to actually happen. So if they can't go out and procure these materials, upon approval of the city, it's going to delay some of that work that's supposed to happen over the next 3 weeks and into October. So we're trying to expedite this. This is one of those things that Anjanette had kind of warned us about in August that we wouldn't know until we opened it up in the last week. And, this was essentially what was found.
Questions?
Just what are the quantities and the unit price on the allowance?
Sorry, there was a small allowance for plywood. I believe it was the 50 square feet and the 75 square feet. So that's sort of subtracted from the actual square footage. Those unit prices were the amounts that were bid. So on the plywood sheathing, it was $10 per square foot. On the wood framing, it was $20 per square foot. So what they're doing here in this calculation, it's subtracting the quantities that were actually carried in the contract. And then, so net of the allowance, that's sort of the additional square footage that was needed to be utilized.
And then is that unit price being carried, so it's more or less just increasing the quantity on
Correct.
that?
Increasing the quantities, which is why we do these unit prices. So essentially, there's sort of an add deduct.
They're not going through to essentially change that unit price?
They can't. So they bid
So
a
that
unit price.
And we
Correct.
just need to increase
The quantities, correct. So part of the reason we do unit prices is we don't know, what we'll find once we actually open that up. We have an estimated quantity, but there's, because of the specific specifications that we need, depending on what is basically under the surface, what could be, if there's damage to those materials, we may need more. So that's sort of what's happening here. Those estimated quantities were, as you can kind of see, they were obviously well short of what we needed. We carried relatively small allowance.
Goes both ways, though. If it turned out that there was nothing bad underneath, we would have gotten a credit back.
Correct, and the credit is always going to be smaller than the ad. So it's a sort of an art to not carrying too large of a quantity, and recognizing that this, you may need to elect to use unit prices. A lot of our projects will have credits come back as well.
So the allowance line is establishing the unit price.
Correct.
And then the quantity is subject to change.
Correct. So
Quantity is the variable.
the allowance for plywood sheathing was 10 square feet, or sorry, yes, 50 square feet at $10 a square foot.
Okay.
So essentially $500 for plywood sheathing, with the additional square footing needed, which is about, I believe it's, the total needed is going to be 284 square feet. So that's representing that change order for that piece of 2,340. And then for the wood framing, the quantity carried was 75 at $20 a square foot. The actual quantity needed is, I think, 193 and some change. So that's another $2,361.54. That's the total value there. Again, there is labor on top of those materials and some additional overhead, which has been reviewed by both the architect and the OPM, and they're in agreement with the additional labor costs as well.
So then a motion is in order to approve change order number 1 in the amount of $6,243.65.
Move to approve. Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Okay. Heard from Andy lately? Okay, do you need to set up a laptop or anything, or? Okay,
And full transparency, we did originally schedule Socotec at 6:30. So they said they'd be attempting to make the 6 o'clock, that they could potentially be late. So don't hold it against them. We did originally have them scheduled at 6:30. Yeah, no problem. And Andy did say he was running from another meeting at 5, so he was going to do his best to get here earlier. So what we discussed earlier, we did have an architect. CSS was one of the selected finalists. They did respond that they had a change in workload since their submission. So they were forthcoming with the fact that they wouldn't be able to fulfill the obligations that they had put in their proposal. So rather than continue in the process, they said, it wouldn't be fair for us to interview. We wouldn't be able to fulfill the obligations in what we had proposed.
they must have gotten a big job.
Either got a big job, change in staffing, I don't know, but they did send us a notice, so.
Okay. Should we adjourn until Andy gets here, unless there's other things we need to discuss? Well, actually, maybe we can ask Amy while we're here rather than adjourning. They've talked about things like swing space. Do you have same?
So we have a limited amount of swing space, meaning if you're working on the first floor, the third floor, we have the marble lobby and the 2 side rooms, the tiled floors we're talking about. When you're working upstairs, the Balfour room and some of the main, that open atrium on the first floor is available. And we've certainly moved things around during the renovation, the envelope project. We have large cases on wheels, 6 or 8 of them, where we can pull highlights from various collections and keep them available for public use. So a limited amount of swing space.
Well, could I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Amy, on the first floor, you have that conference room or that assembly area.
The Balfour room is
Right,
what, yep.
okay, the Balfour. One of the potential courses of action that I was thinking of was taking limited portions of for instance, the children's room, putting them on those mobile bookcases, moving it in there, and creating a temporary children's room for the week or so that would be required. So we would make swing space with the limited areas that you have. Is that a viable course of action for the library to be without the full-blown children's section for a period of time, to be, sensitive to the overall project budget? Or is there a need for the entirety of the program?
Or is there an option to simply say the children's section is out of commission for a week?
So I hate that option. But I'm well aware that we're balancing several things, right? I know that we're balancing budget with what the community needs, what we can offer. So we are willing to be flexible, right? Like if they say, we'll close for a week and then you can have your children's room back for the rest of the project, great, we can do that, we'll make that work. I mean, the beauty of sales is that Plainville, North Attleboro, Seekonk, Mansfield are all right down the road. We work together very well. So for short periods, I would rather not, but again, budget, very conscious of.
Right.
How viable is the Balfour Room as a potential swing space?
Oh, it's great. Staff is well aware that this project is happening, and so we know that programming is gonna be moved around and switched, and we're trying to keep that in mind as we prepare for the year.
I'd like to just express that the intention is that I, along with whoever the selected design vendor is, plan on working very closely with the library and reporting to you on all the different potential courses of action, the implications, and the timing that each area or phased area would be unavailable or reduced or modified. So I think we're going to find a way to yes, and they may not all be the same solution for every area, but I know the children's area in particular is of particular sensitivity, and given that it's on the
In
first
putting
floor.
it closer to the front door, I don't know if that's a security issue or not, so those are the kinds of things we need to think about, right? It also strikes me that sometimes you can take 2 weeks to do something and stay open on a partial basis every day, and sometimes you can take 1 week and say, I'll bear the pain to be closed and
Right,
get it all
and
done.
we're
And those are the
completely up for
kinds of
that.
policy decisions we're gonna have to be looking at, right?
I mean, I'm gonna be working with whoever we choose to try to figure that out. The other thing I wanted to let you know is we talked about off hours. The library is currently closed Thursday morning, so myself and the custodian, occasionally contractors, electricians, plumbers, whoever, are in the building Thursday mornings, but that is always every week empty space for a contractor to do messy work, smelly work, loud work, whatever it is.
Right, and just to respond to that, that's great news. My intention is that whichever area they're working in, we're going to create negative air containment, and we're going to suck the air out of the building rather than put it through the mechanical systems, because the off-gassing or the smell or odors of carpeting and/or the carpet adhesives, they just don't dissipate in 2, 3, 4 hours. So even if they were to do something in a second or a third shift, that odor is still going to exist the next day. So I like the idea, and I think it's appropriate that we seal the area off, put negative air in it, and exhaust that air to the exterior to mitigate and minimize odors. There'll be material safety data sheets, there'll be indoor air quality monitoring, so that the staff will know that the air is healthy, although there may be a residual minor annoying odor. Hopefully it will be acceptable.
Amy, how viable, again, just kind of spitballing, but how viable would any potential hours changes be at the library in terms of like on a temporary basis, in terms of like Thursday you have the later start and the later close, Tuesday you have the earlier start and the earlier close? Like if we find that Thursday morning is an advantageous schedule to get those kinds of things done, or really to like use that, would shifting the Tuesday hours to that Thursday schedule, is that something that's viable? Or is there anything that we could look at, not changing the number of hours, but maybe temporary shift in hours that might be
I
viable?
think the tricky part would be like, so we're open Thursday nights, we're never open Tuesday nights, so the staffing
Okay.
be problematic.
The potential changes to, work hours for existing staff, of course. Okay.
But I will say that through the other project, through COVID, and seeing what the amount of use the library is seeing now, our city is so happy with the service they've gotten. Like, they're still doing curbside for folks who have a hard time getting in and out of the building, right? Like, the community knows how willing the staff is work with them, and if we can communicate saying like, this is better, like, we're gonna close this Tuesday morning, and I know that your mom's group meets that day, but if you give us 2 weeks, you can come back and it will be beautiful. Like, we do have a great, two-way communication with the people who use the library.
I would like to point out, I'm sorry, that the library had indicated that they receive about 370 unique visitors each day. So really, we're working
Our
around.
statistics are crazy. It is, yeah, it is almost 400 people, average visits per day.
Well, that was what I was going to ask, was is there a day or is the library busy on the weekends, empty on the weekends? Is it, wild on Mondays? Is there any pattern to,
We can look at patterns, yep.
because it just struck me that, for instance, if you have to close down, even if it's the entire library for 2 days, just for some particular reason, is that a weekend time? Is that a weekday time? Those are the kinds of things we're going to have to think about, right? And
Yeah,
that
we
will
can, and we
depend
have all that,
on your
we have
use.
all of those numbers. And again, yeah, we're open Saturdays, so I think if we have to close during the week, again, I don't want to, but if that's what the project dictates, that's what we'll do.
I think the goal is continuous operations. I think there's also realities of, I think that's the goal, right? That's the goal, but there's also, I think we even heard from the first two designers, the more phases you have, or the more, kind of shut down, demob and mobilization you have is going to drastically impact the cost of the project. So while maybe I think, again, ultimate goal is to not have any shutdowns, but maybe there's a shift that we can look at that's like tactful, even if it's on a temporary basis, or, if there does have to be some sort of phase where it is a shutdown of a few days, putting those all at the same, trying to work a way to, mobilize those all at the same time to where the impact is limited. It's not a recurring impact to the residents. Like, I think that's something we have to consider. I think Mark said we'll try to lay those options out.
We're going to find a way to, yes. There are some really difficult areas, for instance, if we do replace the main stairway flooring. Right now, it's that rubbery with the little discs, but it doesn't have the ADA coloring or differential coloring. If that is part of the scope of work that is required, how do we do that? That might be an off-hours thing, or that may be a special time. So I think we're going to treat different areas differently, but yes, we're going to present everything, and we're going to have a plan, and we're going to present it, and we're going to discuss it, and see what the implications are from a time and cost perspective, if there is any. Although I am optimistic that we're going to be able to not have as extensive of a move management and a book stack removal program as
So
in all.
you've talked about bases and other things, and so I guess I was wondering can you explain that a little bit more?
Okay, sure. Book stacks have verticals, and then they have all the horizontal shelves with all the books on them. One possible course of action is to just remove the bottom row of books and remove the shelf, and then put the new flooring, the flooring tile
Right.
around the columns.
Top shelves.
Exactly.
And then the contractor just works under it.
That's exactly right. That's a possible course of action. We're going
Would
to,
that mean, though, that there'd be
a little notch.
2-inch wide channels where the uprights were?
And will be in the event that, these book stacks are not likely to move anytime soon. And if we've asked the question, and we'll continue to ask it during design phase, as to what the likelihood is for relocation of things. We're going to have an attic stock of certain floor material, so the possibility exists that we would just replace that row of carpet tile if the book stack or book stacks need to be relocated. So I think there are options, and we'll weigh all of them, and we'll present them all and give you options, and the city can vote, or the MBC can vote how they want to prosecute this.
There's one thing I will say is, even right now, there's some strips in the library where a stack had been removed. Stack had been there for maybe 2 decades. So even those have left behind sort of differences in color, not necessarily stains, but some differences in color from the exposure to sunlight, et cetera. Right.
So when you infill with attic stock, it's fresh compared to what's been in the sun for 15 years.
But
right?
even if currently you carpet tiled around those, and then 10 years from now those stacks need to move, even if you'd still probably have that as an issue, even if we went in and fully replaced everything, right? So you still might need attic stock to go back in and to get things to match. Like there might be, that problem still might exist. So maybe the attic stock would be the solution for both of that.
Well, I will say that the carpet, first off, we don't have carpet tiles in there currently. We have sheet carpeting.
Takes away the option.
And what was put in may not have been the same lot, dye, and color, but it was close enough.
Right.
Or satisfactory enough,
So
knowing
you're
that this
thinking
project was going to be coming.
carpet tiles as opposed to roll carpeting here?
Yes. Carpet tiles are one of the desired elements and recommended for this in the event that something gets spilled or there's a tear or an event. You can just go in and replace those. They're going to have a pattern, quarter turn, or running bond, or whatever we come up with as the design intent. But we're going to buy an attic stock as part of the project. It's generally 10% of each type of flooring or each color or lot in dye. And it may be different on the children's area than it is on the second or third floor, as they said, for wayfinding. Maybe the second floor is of one color and the third floor is something else. It's just, as something to be considered later on. Or not.
When I hear tiles, I think that over time, maybe they pop up or a corner come, that
There are literally millions upon millions of square feet footage of carpet tiles that are in all across America, and the edges coming up or being delaminated or whatever is generally not an issue. This is a fully air-conditioned and heated building. There's a great deal of consistency, and if properly installed, I have not seen or am aware of edges coming up or delaminating or anything like that. So
the life expectancy is similar to.
absolutely, it's actually better because you don't get those long runs, or you don't, and you're able to replace just an area that was adversely impacted by an event or a relocation or something. So in many respects, I'm not saying we're going to use carpet tile. What I'm saying is that in concert with the architect, the library, and you will make a material selection, but this is a material that is one of the courses of action that will be identified.
Does the
I
library?
thought the same thing, though. Like, I was just envisioning, like, oh, great, like 2 feet by 2 feet seams everywhere. That's fantastic. That's a tripping hazard, right? But someone pointed out that City Hall is actually carpet tile. And now I'm looking for seams and I don't see them. Like that's a little game I play.
From the city hall perspective, right, there's constantly chairs and furniture being moved, and I haven't seen seams coming up or anything like that. I would say, too, I think the added, at least from my perspective, and I'm not an expert, but the added benefit of being able to swap out one flawed tile or, one stained section, rather than having to do a
flexibility.
full. Yeah, that flexibility, I think, probably far outweighs the cost of just, any potential concern about like edges or corners, yeah.
Mark, what about the different grades of the carpeting?
Certainly something that will be considered. There is a vast array of grade. There's weight, in terms of ounces, there's 20 ounces, 24 ounce, 28 ounce, or even more. In addition to that, then there are also different levels of backing. Some are acoustical mats that have little rubber mats on them, and others have a varying degree. So one of the things that will, with the selected vendor, we'll be looking at materials and material options and the benefit and cost and the characteristics of each of them. So there's so many options out there. It's like, trying to buy
Is there a
car.
huge difference in the disparity and the longevity?
Depending on the weight of it and the backing of it, yes. Some would have a warranty maybe, or have a lifespan of 10 years versus 20 versus more. So we're going to look at the longevity. And clearly, the city doesn't want to be replacing this carpeting anytime soon. So a robust, long-term, durable material is certainly what we're going to be trying to specify.
Thank
I
you.
mean, the carpet's 30 years old, it's there now, and Amy, you probably don't want to before you retire, have to do this again, right?
I mean, the last
Pass
flooring
on all my
project,
notes to the next person.
the last flooring project that we did at the two elementary schools, they had been original to the schools, so, you know.
But we
it's a year.
specifically chose a shorter term because we thought that those buildings might be replaced at some point, and we didn't want to put in a 75-year floor in a building that might only have 20 years left to it. So
It's
you
all-
obviously have to, but the library is going to be another 100-year building.
Does the library have adequate space or storage area for long-term attic stock?
Yes.
Where would the attic stock be stored, and
We have a small basement.
is it
Basement stock.
Is it suitable for storing that material?
Any word?
Just 5 miles away.
And we would have the conversation with the city to look at if there is central storage anywhere for materials. I don't know what you did with the attic stock for this beautiful, magnificent building, but I'm sure there's a significant amount of attic stock. I don't know if it's here, or it's in DPW, or at some other central location. Maybe as part of your CIP, it's a conversation about central storage of attic stock. Maybe not, I don't know.
Where does it go, and in 20 years, someone sees, oh, I don't know what that is.
It happens, you're right.
So, you don't have an attic, actually, right?
We do. I have never been in it, but several local firefighters have been. It's part of their tour of duty. I'm out.
There's also still some storage areas on the 4th floor that might.
Yeah, yep. If we do have to store part of the collection, we can store some upstairs. And also important to remember that when we're talking about keeping the building open, we clearly check out a lot of materials, but there's a lot of people coming in to use the computer still. We had a brief sort of fall in that traffic after the pandemic, but it's coming back to do printing and meetings and tutoring and that sort of stuff in the building. There are people coming just to use the space.
One of the things to be considered by the MBC is there's a server area, I think it's on the 2nd floor in a conference room, that is currently on the floor and will have to be moved. And how we do that through city resources or a third-party vendor will be a coordination item that we'll have to address.
And we're working with MIS on that.
There you
Yep.
go, okay, great.
And to be clear,
Amy's
that
on
was in
top
the
of this, this
that
is
was in
great.
the RFQ.
She's a great partner. What's that?
To be clear, that was also in the RFQ, so that was mentioned and discussed. So
Yay.
Ah, here he is.
So you're just gonna pop that in somewhere.
Yeah. Thank you. This goes in on this side.
While he's setting up, just a reminder that our next meeting is October 2nd at City Hall at 5:30.
Yeah, I didn't mean to have that side. What was that?
Mason is thrifty and does two-sided printing.
The cost.
All right, where is it?
I mean, I print a lot of paper for you guys. I try to at least double-side it.
It is convenient.
In the old days, Mason, the city would print on one side until you got to about April, when they decided they couldn't buy paper anymore because they ran out of the budget, so then they'd start printing on two sides. But that was before your time.
I hope we don't get back to that again.
Oh, there we go.
It's a nice looking Porsche.
Let me take a breath. First of all, thank you for giving me the time to sit in traffic a little bit longer than I had expected. Anyways, we are Socotec, and we're happy to be here. And let me just jump right into this. For those who don't know, Socotec is a national company with 30 offices around the country. We represent the Boston office. All of this work will be done out of the Boston office. We don't use people from other offices. We have them to draw upon for certain specialties if necessary, but all the work for this project will be local. Just a little bit of history, just to sort of explain, because some of you know me from a prior identity. Socotec has been around for over 40 years in Europe and now in the United States. And back in 2017, a company called Vidaris purchased CBI, who you also know, which was a predecessor. And then Socotec purchased Vidaris. My company, Russo Bar Associates, joined in 2022. And both CBI and Russo Bar have been doing work with the city for a number of years. Here we go. The services that we offer are pretty much the full gamut. Architecture, engineering, structural, civil, building envelope. We do OPM work as well. We have a whole energy group that is very proficient in all the new codes related to energy. We also have a code group, which does a lot of life safety, fire protection, as well as regular code work. We do commissioning for MSBA and DCAM, and also do a lot of historic restoration work. The team for this project, Wayne Lawson, who is a senior principal, and myself, I'm also a senior principal. He is technically principal in charge of this project. I will be the project manager on this. As far as in-house, Maria, I'll let her speak a little bit in a moment. She is our head architect on this. Greg Christensen, another registered architect, he is involved in interior design as well as other types of stuff. Jack Rush, an assistant project manager, and James Michael, he is our technical drafter and does that type of work. We've carried a couple consultants. We have Peer, who we do a lot of work with as far as for hazmat type stuff, but we've also brought in Mabit on this one because they are pretty proficient in air quality type stuff, because that's one of the things where we want to be concerned a little bit here, where it is a working library, and ripping up carpet and things like that sometimes presents issues with air quality. We are very knowledgeable in the public realm as far as working under Chapter 149 projects, and all of the requirements that they have. Having worked with a long list of cities and municipalities, that's just a small number of the projects, of the cities that we've worked with. Now talk a little bit, well actually Maria, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience, since you're the architect who's going to be working on this.
So I've been an architect for over 35 years. I have worked on lots of different projects. Education buildings are my preference, and libraries are my favorite. I have had the luck of working in wonderful libraries, from new construction, renovation, materials exchange. Oops, thank you very much. Should I start again?
No, you.
So I've been, like I said, I've been lucky to work in lots of libraries in lots of different ways, from new construction to renovations to just changing something in libraries. It's been very common. I've also been involved in the libraries in my town. We are going through building a new one, and that's been very, very exciting from my point of view. I'm a registered architect. I'm a AIA member as well, and what else? I'm also very concerned about the sustainability. I'm a LEED approved professional in building design and construction. And I'm very familiar with carpets. I enjoyed the conversation that you had on the carpet tile. I think carpet tile is a very, very good option. Your concerns, I hope, feel better, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer about any of the carpet tile concerns. Carpet carpet tiles everywhere now, and it's pretty perfected by now. So I think that you can feel comfortable that it is a good option to go with. There are lots and lots of designs, lots of options, lots of qualities, and it's just a whole investigative process to go through.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the one of this project, the things about this project. It's a flooring replacement, carpet replacement, but it's also a logistics project because it's a working library, and one of the things, obviously this picture, the middle one, you all know the library. It's multi-story, wide open. It's not like yes, there are some individual rooms, but it's lots of wide open spaces. So to do this project, keeping the library open that's really what this is going to come down to. And also just dealing with on a day-to-day basis, keeping it clean, keeping access to every to the whole library area. And so phasing it, doing this in a phased approach as far as what areas can be used. I know that you don't necessarily want to move books around too much. I mean, obviously, because it's that's going to make it, I mean, that in itself becomes a whole project as far as lengthening the whole thing. It may be that doing much of this work after hours may be the way to go, so that they work from whether it's, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the hours of the library are, but it could be that from 6 o'clock on or something like that, they're able to work and just have specific areas they could be closed off a little bit, but at least that they're clear and cleaned up, and the working environment is protected. I also know that during the walkthrough, we had seen the room that is sort of a historical archive type of a room. I can't remember exactly what that was. And that has a little bit of its own concerns, specifically related to moisture in particular. So it may be that carpet isn't the right material to go in that room. So one of the things that Maria will be looking at is what are the other options there. And at the same time, maybe even looking a little bit at the mechanical systems just to make sure that they can handle what's going on there. Is there any kind of things that we need to look up as far as that's concerned? We also looked at the area at the front entrance, or in the circulation desk, which probably changed configuration or use so at one point in time, so that the carts are running over that sort of abrupt transition right there. So obviously that would change. We're aware that there's some built-in cases which are not moving. Obviously, we also saw that there are some of the stacks are the metal ones, which look like probably the posts are anchored to the ground, but the shelves themselves can come out. So it could be that taking out the bottom shelves allows the carpet tile to be laid with some cutting around the base. But then you have attic stock, so that if in the future if things are moved around, that's a nice thing about carpet tiles, having attic stock that you can, if something happens, a spill or something like that can't come off, you can deal with that. But and that the room on the picture on the top right there, far right, which is the one that's the room with the fireplace and everything else. We also looked at that, and that's a bound piece of carpet. It's not, it's on top of the tile and everything there. So it'll be interesting to see what's under there, and then what the decisions are, whether we go back with more of a large carpet or whether you guys decide you want to do something as far as individual area rugs. But that's, those are all the kind of things that we'll look at on that. So,
Yeah, the edges on the flooring it has very nice opportunities.
yeah, and we actually
Kind of
lifted it up, and it
yeah.
does go underneath there. It's a beautiful room, that is. That's right. Sort of in conclusion of this part of it, we are an established, stable firm. They've been around for a long time, financially very stable, key personnel. The principals, myself and Maria is head of our architectural group, will be involved in this project. A lot of experience in both, not only the architectural side of things, but just dealing with construction projects that are in occupied buildings, active occupied buildings, whether it's schools, residential, all the types of things, in dealing with that. And we'll come up with a detailed project approach. We will be very open to your needs and suggestions. And we'll keep this project moving as quickly as you need to. That'll obviously be one of the discussions, is what's the best time of the year to do this. So, and from a standpoint of our presentation, that's it. Questions?
Mark?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. You've listed Mabit and Pier. Mabit is doing the
Air quality.
indoor air quality, both the baseline and ongoing regular, and then the other firm is doing the hazardous materials initial
Exactly.
assessment and report.
Right.
Relative to cost estimating, you're going to do that work in-house?
Most likely in-house, yes.
And code review and code
Same.
consultants with your code
We have,
team?
yes.
Okay, so I guess your RFQ response first off, I know you from prior projects here in the city. But your RFQ response demonstrated extensive experience in building exteriors, fire protection, structural work, but really did not extensively focus on flooring. Now, I know that Maria is relatively new to Socotec, and she brings a wealth of experience, but I guess I'd like for you to, because it wasn't in the four corners of your document, it's not within your DSB response, if you could just talk a little bit more about your flooring and library work and your expertise in this realm.
Okay. You want to go into that again?
Well, like I said before, I have worked in lots and lots of libraries. I know several of them have been phased. I know that there are some sensitive areas, particularly during the phasing project, for example, a children's library, like you spoke earlier, but one of the other major ones is a circulation desk. The library cannot function without a circulation desk, and that's probably one of the trickiest ones, I would suggest. The reference area is, I think, a little bit more movable, but it's also a little bit sensitive. I was at the library earlier, and I think there are several desks on the several areas, several floors. I would be interested in finding out about every single one of them. But a project like this is really a puzzle. It's a puzzle that we need to work with the librarians primarily, and with all the different people that are involved in the group. So that's the way I look at it. It's a lot of communication. It's a lot of everybody needs to understand what to expect, timing, schedule, all these different things. I know you're concerned about budget, but timing also is affecting the budget. So I think that is all things that we just need to work out together. As far as finishes, because of acoustic reasons, carpet is very commonly used in libraries. The range of carpeting is huge. Depending on how long you want this investment to last, you might want to really invest a little bit more money. Money and the quality does correlate. High traffic finishes, people don't think of carpet as being one of those, but there are a lot of high traffic carpets available in the market right now. And one of the things that happens with a solid carpet, which is almost what you have right now, is where the same pattern is throughout the entire library, is that everywhere, just the walking creates these wearing patterns that become very aging on the space. So patterns are also an option to look at, different designs, not only for the carpet, but just how to lay it out in the space. The seams are not an issue anymore. The picking up of the tiles used to be when the tiles used to be were first created, but they've worked out all those details, so it's really not a concern at all for us. Then the underlayments, depending on what acoustic properties or the carts, some carts cannot take certain underlayments because they might be too soft or too deep for the carts that you might have. You might not want to invest in carts at this point, so that's another thing to think about. So it's a whole conversation. Every library is different. You have stairs also. What do you want to do with the stairs? Do you want to carpet the stairs or not? And right now it has the rubber stairs, which how do you coordinate the colors with that, or the transitions of the materials and all that is part of the conversation.
So just two follow-up questions. I see that you are not a current MCPPO, but your application is pending or your hours are pending. Who would be the MCPPO from Socotec on this project?
Wayne is an MCPPO.
Okay.
And by the time the project starts, I'll be too.
Yeah, there's several of
it's-
us that are redoing them.
Awesome. Yeah.
Classes next
COVID
week.
played
Yeah.
a big
Oh, yeah.
issue. And
And actually, I have been MCPPO before twice. It's just that the renewal schedule is very tight, and I let it expire.
Totally
So
got it.
I know my stuff.
so the schedule that was listed in the RFQ, the timeline for schematic DD construction documentation, do you believe that it is able to be condensed and that more time on the construction phase could be allowed and/or to complete the project well in advance of September? Or what are your thoughts on the overall project schedule?
Yeah, I think we can probably compress the schedule, the design schedule a little bit, you know, to particularly if we get a jump on it. Because it's, you know, as I said, it's not a complicated project as far as, you know, we can be doing a lot of things at the same time. Having the discussions with the librarian, talking about the use of space while we're doing drafting and things like that we need to do. I'm not sure what you have as far as plans, whether you have anything on CAD if or not, or if we're gonna have to create all of that, but that can be being done while we're doing the other discussion. You know, we can have as a draftsman working on that while, because we can send, you know, as far as measurements and things like that, if it's necessary. There's also different ways. If you said we have no plans at all, then we would get a firm like Existing Conditions, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they come in and they just do a laser survey of the whole thing. And we work with that. But those, and then you have the plans. Those types of things we can do to speed things up as far as that's concerned.
So my final question is related to, first off, I recognize you're a Boston firm, but have extensive experience and a history of working in Attleboro. On prior projects in which I've worked with Socotec or Russo Bar, neither Mabit or Pier were partners with you, and I noticed that they are in Burlington and Stoneham. Any consideration to using firms that are more local to the job site in the event that they need to attend to issues or
Yeah.
matters, or what are your thoughts on these remote firms?
Here, we've worked with quite a lot. So we have a good working relationship with them. They're actually all over the place. A lot of the firms now have people located all because of COVID. Mabit, really, it was the issue was the air quality, you know, that they provide, and they're very strong in that. And they also have people all over the place. They didn't see an issue with it. But I mean, you know, if there was someone more local, I mean, we're not, you know, married to either of them.
Right, I'm just asking
No, I know,
questions.
yeah.
I appreciate your frank responses, so thank you. I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
Questions from the commission? Lisa, do you?
Can you just speak more to your current project workload for both of you, and then maybe some of the project workload of the other folks on the project, on the team that you assembled, and kind of who the day-to-day are, and what you kind of see in the next 12 months that we've kind of proposed as a time?
We obviously have a workload, as every firm does. We go after jobs that we are interested in, this one in particular because of our relationship with Attleboro, and also because of Maria's, you know, in connections with libraries and that type of a thing. Yes, this is different than the type of project that you've done with Socotec or Russo Bar, but this is the one of the things that was nice about this change that Russo Bar made was being able to do, you know, more of this type of project. And I think that this, part of what I try to see as what makes us a little bit different than some architectural firms is we've always approached projects to really focus on the needs of you guys, not saying this is what you got to have, this is what it has to look like, this is and this is what we think. Really listening to you guys and working with you and the logistics of it. And we've done so much work, you know, as far as in existing buildings. But so that I think speaks to our ability. and the repeat business. Now, as far as workload, it's steady. Our workload is steady, but I think that this does sort of fit in with things. A lot of where, construction side of things is winding down. We have people that are available from, as far as for the field work, to get out here and do measuring and that type of stuff. And I think that, Maria, you can speak a little bit better about the workload of the architectural side of things.
We've been lucky. We have work, but we always need to, because our projects are not very huge projects, we always need to feed in work that comes along. So in reality, it's really almost a linear process in that we start a project and we finish a project and the other one has to be right behind it. So we schedule and make sure that all deadlines are met, and there's always people available. We have lots of staff to work on the projects, so we do have availability.
Yeah, our model is we do a lot of smaller projects. We don't do the 2-3 year architectural projects.
I do have one follow-up question. Construction administration in the field, would that be Maria or Mr. Rush, or would it be Mr. Christensen?
It could be, I mean, James Michael might be involved because he is an architect, unregistered, but, and he was our draftsperson. Sometimes we carry them through to it. Jack might be involved. It all depends upon the timing of things. We have some other lower level architects who would be very, that's usually, we have a few, they're basically architecturally educated, but non-registered, younger people that have really good field experience dealing with
So what I think I hear you saying is that yourself and Maria would be involved in the pre-construction phase, and once we migrated into construction phase, for construction administration, it would be someone else.
No, construction administration would still be us.
Yeah, we wouldn't abandon
Yeah.
we don't just hand it over. So it
right,
really is part of the.
Yeah.
A lot of the construction administration is not on site or not dealing with people well, but a lot of the processing of the products, making sure that they comply with specifications, all these different things that are technical things and nitty-gritty things. So we would have junior staff for that. There are staff that are very interested in construction. Construction administration is one of the areas where we as architects and engineers learn the most. So it's one of those areas where everybody likes to do it.
I'm going to drill down one
Meetings,
follow-up
yeah.
question. Attendance at on-site intermittent project meetings with the contractor and the different consultants and the owner responsible for taking minutes and generating that. Who do you believe would be doing that, or it's yet to be determined?
Well, it's Greg Christensen, the second person on there. He very well could do that. I mean, Maria and myself would be involved on an as-needed basis, but Greg he handles a lot of that stuff. He actually lives on the South Shore.
And he has 30-plus years of experience
Yeah,
as well, and
right.
does a lot of construction administration. He is currently doing several, actually.
Doesn't look that old, so thank you.
Yeah.
Also,
I just found out he's coloring his hair.
20-plus, yeah. Yes.
So,
He looks young in the picture.
so just more directly, the contract, like the design phase that was identified sort of as October to January as a rough estimate. During that time, because I imagine it's 3 months out, right? You can probably predict where you're at. What percentage of your time is going to be devoted to this project for the both of you?
As much as it's needed to get it done. I mean, really, we don't really put percentages. I think a lot of the communication with the librarians or with people who are in the library that are needed to solve the puzzle, we just need to get it done, and we put the time that's necessary.
And it would be.
I think this project is going to be, it's because it's going to have to be, the installation has to be done while the building is open. I think it'll take a lot of conversations, and I definitely will be involved in that.
Andy, any thoughts? Any additional?
Maria will be the one who would be mostly involved on the day-to-day basis. I will be mostly overseeing more of an administrative, making sure that that the deadlines are met and things like that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions, Mason?
No, I think that was everything I had.
Questions around the table? Okay. I guess Ed?
Yeah, have you had, or do you have any opinions of the various advantages of tile over carpet in terms of the time that it'll last, and the ease of cleaning it, and of course noise, and of rolling things on carpet versus vinyl? I'm wondering if you have any comparative information on that, and also the costs of the two things.
Cost, let me start with cost, because I know that's always a big budget is always a big thing. Carpets have a huge range, but it's very in the middle of cost and in the low range. Needless to say, if you spend very little on it, you're buying a very low quality product, so you are going to have to replace it sooner than later. For a library, I would always encourage you to go for a product that is going to be more long-lasting, more longer warranties. There are several piles. What we call piles are the way the carpet is made. There's a loop pile and there's cut pile. Usually you don't want a tall pile because those would need the carts to be pushed harder, especially when the carts are full of books. It becomes very hard to move them if the pile is very high on the carpet. So you would probably want to go for a low pile. We would get samples. We could test them with the carts. If you want to we can get 3 or 4 tiles, and you can go with the carts and try it and see to make sure you feel comfortable before you put the tile in the entire library. Vinyl is easy to clean if they do a good job. It's a little harder, and the carts are easier to move, but it does not provide acoustic protection. And in a library, acoustics is a big issue. So that's one of the reasons that carpet is better for libraries, because you have several people speaking, and then there's just too much background noise for people to concentrate. Nowadays, it's a little bit less of an issue than it used to be decades ago, because people would go to the libraries precisely to really be quiet and concentrate in a very quiet environment. But still, people still need some quiet spaces, and the carpet absorbs it in the room. Whereas if you have hard floors, like a tile, any kind of tile, ceramic tile is even worse, or stone, the sound just reverberates, and it just does not help. And carpet is usually closest to where people are, closest to where people are making noise, whether it's because you're stepping on it and have some high heels, or because you're talking or running, or different kinds of motions create different noise. Carpet absorbs it quicker, instead of making sure that it gets to the ceiling. Ceiling also absorbs, like here there's an ACT tile, and it's absorbing our voices, but it takes longer for it to get there, so there's more chance of it to reverberate. So carpet is usually the better one, acoustically.
I mean, I have vinyl that has an underlayment of cushion.
Vinyl?
Yeah, vinyl that has an underlayment of cushion, which does decrease the noise. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering what the comparison is in terms of the quantitative comparison between carpet and vinyl. Are there any figures available?
I'm sure we could find some figures specific to what you're looking for, but in general, acoustically, carpet would be better. In general, for longevity, vinyl also. I mean, there are, depending on the installation as well. There are vinyl tiles that also can pick up if the concrete floor has moisture, then that brings a few other issues.
What is
especially in the lower floor. That would be only in the basement. So it depends on so many things.
And, when we did the schools and the different flooring options, we developed a design decision matrix and looked at different types of material, from wood flooring to composite to alternative. And then there were the pros and the cons, and cost and acoustics and compliance with ASTM standards. So I would imagine that we would go through the same exercise and present to you recommendations, and there will be different recommendations. What we do at circulation may be different than in meeting rooms, which may be different than in the children's room, which may be different on stairways or elsewhere. So it's a really good question, and I think it's a room by room or an area by area decision.
And moving things with wheels on carpet is a lot more difficult than on a.
Understood,
vinyl surface.
yeah.
A lot different.
It depends on the thickness of the carpet and how much acoustic matting it has. So we're going to handle that during the
Okay.
design phase and bring you options.
Hey, any other questions? Then, thank you for coming in. We will deliberate, and you can call Mason tomorrow and see how you did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board meeting directly
Other one? Yeah,
so that's what they're looking
in the other room. At least you're in the other room.
Okay,
Or convenient that way.
Good night.
it's now incumbent upon us to rank 1, 2, and 3, based on the presentations. And I don't know, Mark, do you want to start with your?
Well, sure. Well, obviously, from the written RFQ submissions, the commission met, they discussed and ranked the 3 interview firms tonight. Socotec was ranked with the most preferable score at 1.83, according to Mason's mathematics. LLB was ranked second at 2.50, and Matt Motts was ranked fourth behind CSS at 3. My observation, and just telling you what I think I heard tonight, was I would say that Motts's firm presented the least compelling interview, convincing. They are a small firm. They have a municipal client base, and they're certainly capable of doing it. Their non-responsiveness to, the role that Mr. Motts versus John versus construction administration, there were, it just, generally speaking, it was, in my opinion, the weakest of the 3 interviews this evening. With regard to LLB and Socotec, I like the fact that both firms brought, in essence, 2/3 of their team. Socotec has experience in town, but LLB is a library expert. They have extensive experience on small focus projects. They have a large number of flooring projects. They're located in Pawtucket versus Boston. They brought up the idea of, all the different options. They offered attention to each of the different areas in specific. This is LLB. They brought up the collection area, which the historic collection area, which is going to be its own little micro project. I thought that Socotec did not necessarily answer the question by Mason on workload. And I guess really what it comes down to, because this is going to be a PM or project manager-driven project, is LLB had Angela and Socotec brought Maria. And so to a great extent, or to some portion of your analysis, it really comes down to who do you believe had the strength. Maria is new to Socotec, but has library experience for other firms. If you look at her resume, she spent 2 years with this firm, 2 years with this firm, 2 years with this firm, and 2 years, so she moves around a little bit, and I'm not quite sure why, and I wasn't going to go there. But she did have good answers. She called this project a puzzle, that it was going to require a great deal of communication. So I don't think you can go wrong either way. Presentation-wise, there was some strengths in LLB, and there were strengths in Socotec, and it really comes down to a preference and your feeling about what you heard and what you have read, and in a comparative basis now. The RFQ is very specific. The Office of Inspector General is specific in terms of how you make your recommendation and how you vote, in this RFQ talked about a comparative analysis, because they are, all the firms that you interviewed tonight and received packages from are all lawfully able to do this work. So it comes down to comparative analysis. Was Socotec stronger than LLB, or was LLB stronger than Socotec, or where was MOTS in this? So you should be having your discussion on comparative strength and comparative experience and comparative expertise in the subject area. So I can say more, but I'd rather answer specific questions rather than just, you know.
I think you've set the stage well. Before I ask the other commission members for their opinion, Mason, anything you want to add?
Sure. So, from my perspective, I thought the most compelling presentation was from LLB in terms of clearly there's an extensive knowledge of libraries. I think Socotec has, personally, I don't think Matt's, I think what was clear to me from the presentation is I don't think MOTS is equipped to fulfill the needs of this project at this time. That I just felt like that was, I believe they can do it. I just don't think, I think on a comparative basis of the three, I'm not a voting member, but from my perspective, I don't think that's the firm we would want to be looking to engage at this time. I don't think they have necessarily the staffing to meet the needs of this project. I think that was a little bit unclear, was sort of the way they were staffing the project. So I had some concerns there. A lot of the projects that were referenced as past experience were actually ongoing and active. So I'm not sure if they've been really completed the way they were kind of discussing them. So personally, I don't know what Mark, I felt like Mark was on the same page, but I didn't think MOTS was really the most compelling of the three. But I thought the most compelling was LOB, I think, for this project. I think the library experience is extensive. I think all the firms before us tonight kind of talked specifically about this being a logistical project, more so than a design project. Obviously, there's design components, but the logistics being the primary focus. And I think LLB was the most equipped to actually discuss the move management. They've worked with move managers in the past, specifically a vendor that is on the state bid list that we could actively engage if that was the preference of the city. And they actually walked us through how they did it with another library and demonstrated a phase plan, which I think is exactly what the city is going to need. I think we need someone with that experience to come in and work with the library staff, or work with our construction team, project manager, and the MBC to actually build out a phase plan, and they have experience doing that. I think Socotec is a great firm. I think we've done a lot of good projects with them or with Russo Bar, but I don't see the library experience there, and I'm not sure that I see the same kind of phased experience that LLB was directly able to speak to, which I think is really should be the focus of how we choose a firm here, just my perspective.
Jerry?
I would rate them in order LLB, Socotec, and then MATS. I don't think you'd go wrong with either one of the top two. I think we'd be happy either one of them. I think that LLB had the edge a little bit over Socotec because they had the experience of done apparently tons and tons of libraries. So I think they'd be a little bit better suited to the logistics design than Socotec, but I don't think Socotec would have a problem doing the job either. I don't think we'd go wrong either way. So my first vote was LLB.
And Socotec 2 and
Yes.
MOTS 3.
Yes.
Thank you.
4.
Ed?
I wasn't here for most of the LLB presentation, hearing others, and I looked at that pretty closely. I liked that from the very beginning. They have 6 principals and 21 workers. It's kind of small. They are in Pawtucket. And as I said last time I talked to them, Boyden Library in Foxborough is really something. And they wouldn't have picked anyone that wasn't top-notch. That's mainly the reason I would go with that. And I think the others pretty much could handle it very well. I really haven't got a good comparison analysis of the other two. The ones we saw tonight, I like Socotec. Mates seem to get bogged down in phasing and the technicality of the process rather than the holistic job. So I would go with that, the LLB, Socotec, and the Mates.
Okay. Jackie?
I tend to agree very much with what Jerry said. I liked LLB, I liked Socotec, Mott's was number 3. I liked that LLB had the experience. They only seemed to have one person, Socotec only seemed to have one person that really had library experience. And like Mark said, 2 years, kind of get a little nervous about that process. Why, the why part that we couldn't ask. I liked that Socotec showed pictures of our library and the stains on the floor and the nasty looking at the carpeting. But I liked the experience with LLB. So I'd say LLB, then Socotec, and Mott's.
Mott's obviously was third. That's a given. I went back and forth between LLB and Socotec, and I decided LLB is number 1, Socotec is number 2, for pretty much the reasons that everybody already explained. And the funny part is, last meeting, I chose LLB as 1, Socotec as 2. And Mott's was 4 for me at the last meeting, so I was more impressed with LLB's presentation, their proposal. Socotec, you know, we've had experience with them. They're good. Either one could do the job, but I prefer LLB.
Okay, Jay?
I'm actually going to pivot from what I thought of 5 minutes ago.
That happens.
That's part of the discussion process, the
Yeah.
Well,
collaborative process.
Honestly, Mott's is definitely third. Originally, I was going to pick Socotec first, mainly because they have a history with us, and they've done well as far as I'm concerned. It is, going back to what Terry said, the company that I picked first last meeting. However, the inconsistency of possible people on the job, more so the years and movement and transitions, does concern me a little bit. But mainly, LLB would be my first choice, mainly because I've been to the Franklin Public Library, and it is an amazing place. So I'm going to do LLB, Socotec, and Mott's.
Thanks. Yeah?
I reiterate pretty much everything everybody else has already said. Mott's was definitely my third choice. I noticed they didn't really talk much about MCPPO certification or Chapter 149 projects, so that kind of stood out to me. I didn't think their presentation was very strong. LLB I liked from the start in terms of, you know, their proposal that was sent in. I thought it was very well presented today. Their presentation was, I thought, really good. The one part, in looking at it from the procurement lens, there was one screen that he showed where they have a schedule of when they'll do all the procurement dates, and he just plugs in one date and flows. I was like, that's great. So I was impressed by that.
Do you wish you made that when you?
I do. And Socotec, of course, they are excellent as well. But I feel like LLB has the library experience. So my vote would be LLB, Socotec, and Mott's.
Andrew?
I agree with
Now that you're
everyone.
vice chairman, you get to go next to last, you understand.
Yes. I agree with everyone else, Mott's being third, due to their presentation and lack of bringing a second person to do the presentation. LLB, Socotec, very close, and still having a hard time internally, but I'm going to go with Socotec being one, due to their previous experience with the city and their proven track record to perform. For me, I agree, their Maria bouncing around could pose an issue, but with them, Russo Bar being acquired by Socotec, they've got the horsepower, so to speak, and the size of the company to overcome that. If there were any issues, LLB, thought they did a great job with their presentation, their history, or they're specializing in libraries. With our library project being just the flooring, I don't think Socotec would have any issues performing it versus if LLB was doing a full-scale library renovation. So that's why I went with Socotec 1, LLB 2, Mott's 3.
Okay. I, like Jay, have been very conflicted. In my mind, reading the presentations, a week ago, I had Mott's as number 1. They are clearly number 3. That's why these interviews are always instructive. A lot of times people talk themselves out of things, and I think that happened tonight. Coming in, I had LLB ranked above Socotec. I know we have a great history with Socotec. I was concerned about, however, that this wasn't a roof, it was a floor. And, they did allay a lot of those fears that I have. But I kind of went back and forth in my mind. Frankly, I think Andy is a much more dynamic presenter than the guy from LLB, and that's probably to his advantage. And listening to this discussion, I've gone back and forth, but I think in the end, I'm going to vote number 1 for LLB and number 2 for Socotec and 3 for Mott's. And so I'm sure you can do the math, but I think LLB has finished first. And Amy, I'll ask you, you don't get a vote, but did you want to share an opinion?
Really in agreement with the whole room here. Like I came in wanting LLB to be number 1 because of the library experience and because that puzzle is going to be so much of my daily life, the staff daily life. But listening to Socotec, I'm like, I'd be okay if the city feels strongly about working with them. I'd be okay with that. So yeah, I'm in. But I have another meeting after this, right? I'm going to the board meeting around the corner here, so it has been a very busy day. I'm constantly
Were those board
shifting.
members who were?
Yeah, so we're meeting around the corner because I couldn't get to the library fast enough after this to have our meeting. But so I want somebody in the building every day who knows what they're doing as I am bouncing from thing to thing.
Okay. So Mason, you have the numbers?
I do. So,
Is this the aggregate of the interview or the aggregate of?
No,
Specifically the
this is
interview.
solely the interview.
so we had previously ranked with the finalists coming in the top 4. We had offered interviews to the top 4 ranked respondents. 1 had rejected the interview opportunity, and so 3 of those 4 were interviewed tonight. And so LLB was ultimately the highest ranking, with 7 of 8 of the members of the commission ranking them number 1. So coming in at an average of 1.125.
I'm sorry, that's not correct. I thought Ed had LLB ranked 2nd, as did Andrew, and that would be.
I just had Andrew with it at 2nd. Ed, you had LLB at 1?
Or did you have LLB at 1 or 2?
I had it for 1.
Okay, I made a mistake then, I apologize.
So again, I had 7 of 8 members ranking LLB as number 1, all 8 members ranking Mott's as number 3, and 7 of 8 members ranking Socotec as number 2. So, sort of the aggregate scores, the lowest number being the highest rank was LLB with 1.125, Mott's with an even 3, and Socotec with 1.875. So I think a pretty clear recommendation by the commission to move forward and engage with LLB. I think it would be probably prudent to do an official vote
Yes, so
body
in
and-
a moment, I'm going to call for a vote to recommend to the mayor that we enter into contract negotiations with LLB with the proviso that if we are unable to reach a contractual arrangement with them, then we reserve the right to go to our number 2 candidate. So,
So moved.
Second.
I have a question. I know this isn't a bid situation, that's a negotiation price. Is it possible to get a price from each one of those 2 firms? And
So-
help that with the decision?
So technically, so the way the RFQ structure and the award structure is you recommend, it's a qualifications-based selection. So you engage with the selected vendor. If you're unable to reach an agreement on a contract price, you are allowed to engage with sort of the next most advantageous ranked proposer.
The thing with that, the problem with that is you don't know whether the price that you negotiate and end up with them is the best price you can get.
Absolutely. And
Unless you talk to somebody else.
absolutely. So an RFQ is technically not based on price, right? It's a request for qualifications, and it's intended to be, ranking respondents based on their qualifications and then comparing them through a comparative process and selecting who the city, or, in this case, the commission making the recommendation to the city on who they think the best respondent is to engage for this project. And then we have the authority to negotiate a price, but again, doesn't mean until there's an agreement, which we, in the past, right, even with one of the firms who's here tonight, they've provided a price proposal and we said, hey, that's not comporting with what the scope of work is, and we respond back with an alternative and come to an agreement at some point. It's possible, it's always possible that won't happen, right? If a firm says, hey, on a project where we'll meet with the OPM and kind of what we think the scope is and what a price should be, if they're not even in the realm of possibility and we negotiate and they're just not coming to the table on that, we would probably come back and say, hey, this is just not going to be an option for us. We'd like to engage the next best vendor.
Jerry, I think I know where you're coming from, which would be basically that if you have 2 very close candidates, you might want to choose the one who is less expensive. That is unfortunately not the way the law works, and so we are bound to follow the law.
That's how the world works, though.
Yes,
Welcome to Massachusetts.
But municipal law, state law, and the real world are very different,
So to give you an example, if it was exempt from, I think it's Chapter 7 or Chapter 30B, if it was exempt from Massachusetts procurement laws, in theory, you could negotiate with vendors simultaneously if it was an exempt service, but this isn't an exempt service, and so we're beholden to go through the qualifications-based process, recommend a vendor to engage with, and then attempt to come to an agreement. If we're unable to do so, again, we're in this, we've talked about budget being a very serious focus of this project. If we're unable to do that, we will come back to the commission, and of course, we'll notify the commission of what we believe is advantageous of her contract price and move forward. But if we can't come to that, we're always considering the budget on this project, and we'll come back and we'll be willing to go to the next vendor.
Jerry, there are many elements to this. There's the hazardous abatement scope of work, there's indoor air quality, and the architectural design aspect of it. And I know from past experience, the city has asked for detailed breakdowns of cost by each individual element to negotiate very, very hard to come up with a number that it works for the city and makes sense for the, as a percentage of construction or overall project budget. There are a number of metrics there. And so I think that the city is going to hold its ground and negotiate hard to get to a number that is fair, reasonable, and makes sense. That level of expertise exists, and there's a history of doing just that. So I understand that, we're not happy that the state and the
I know that's
procurement laws
reality.
don't match.
I just felt a little bit of alliance to Sosatec, because they've done a bunch of work for us before, and we've been happy with them. They seem to be good to deal with, so where it's so close, I mean, I don't know.
Right. And that's where it comes down to the comparative analysis based on this particular project. It really has to be looked at. How did they respond to this RFQ, compared to their peers or to the other respondents. And I think that the city here and the Municipal Building Commission has actually fulfilled its responsibility with a great deal of defensible activity. The process has been spectacular, and I applaud you for your thoroughness to the process and to the law. So that's my observation.
No, and I'll just state again, I mean, the budget for this project has been a serious concern from the outset, right? I think there was, even when I went down to council to present, to the municipal council to present on kind of what we were asking for a budget for this project. And there was definitely, a really strong sense from the council that, hey, we thought this was going to be a lot cheaper. Like, why is this the budget? So I recognize that, we have a pretty strict budget here. It's going to be difficult for us to be coming back. So from the outset, the negotiation of this contract is going to impact the budget we have for construction and any changes that could come up or contingencies related to hazardous materials or any other work. So, I mean, it's going to be a focus of the city to try to get the best possible deal in this contract because we really don't have another choice. But we also, of course, we always act that way. But just so you're aware.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Should we be adjourning at 7:23?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.